phone just stopped. I haven't done this in so long, I feel like nervous. Hey there, Fiber Junkies! Welcome back to the Color Cauldron. I'm Johanna, the owner and dyer behind Potion Yarns and host of this video channel, and it has been a minute since I had a video out. Today is actually the 4-week anniversary of us moving into this house. I cannot believe it has been that long already. It just feels like time is flying by. I feel like we just got here, and on the one hand, we feel so at home and so comfy in our new space. It felt like home literally the very first night we moved in. Even though we are getting more settled, we still don't have a lot of my business stuff out unpacked or set up and organized the way we would like it. We are still living with a lot of yarn and business stuff in our main living spaces because we've been renovating my basement into the new dye studio, and it has been a lengthy process. We're not even doing like a full finished basement. We're really just trying to get this old historic home fixed up, get some plumbing and electrical work done, get the floor leveled out, make sure that every time it rains, I'm not going to have a bunch of mud and rain all over my dye space and my electrical outlets and all that. And as you know, with old houses, any house, anytime you do work, it always seems like it takes longer and you find unexpected surprises. But especially when you are working with an older home, there's always a whole lot of unexpected. So that's what we're dealing with right now. I'm taking a break today just to show you the things that I've been working on, but I wanted to start with a couple projects that I finished recently. The first one, I actually feel terrible that I haven't shown this off on my social media or anything. I haven't even taken pictures of it yet. Honestly, I don't know about you, but the part of finishing a project that I hate the most is taking the pictures, because it just feels like an ordeal to make sure you get the right lighting and to get photos taken. And if you're like me, you like to model your own knitwear, but then you have to have somebody else take the pictures, and I'm really picky about posing and camera angles and the way that I like my pictures done. But then if I have somebody else do it, I'm also really picky about modeling. Okay, I'm just a control freak, what can I say? I really kind of am, especially when it comes to my handiwork and my creative pursuits. I really like to show them off to best advantage and in a particular way, and I'm really bad about taking photos of myself. So all that to say, I have not done the photos of this yet. I haven't showed it on the podcast because I haven't been filming videos. I haven't taken pictures, and I'm bummed because this is one of my very favorite projects I think I've ever knit in my life. Hands down, loved this sweater. It went so much faster than I thought it was going to. It really didn't take me long at all. I loved that I'm working with my hand-dyed yarns, so I'm sure that I'm probably biased because of that. I just love working with my own colorways, and this one in particular was one of my favorites that I've been wanting to try for a while. But also, it's just a really well-written pattern and a lot of fun, and the end result is just a big, super cozy, snuggly project. And now that it's spring and it's too warm to wear this, let me show you what I knit. This is the pink Fizz sweater by Andrea Mowry, also known as Dear Renee Knits. And yes, it looks ginormous because it is knit that way on purpose. A lot of people were casting this on back in December, right before Christmas. This pattern came out. Perfect time of the year to release it, but not a very good time for me as a business owner to think about dyeing yarn. I really wanted to create kits for this pattern when it came out because I have the perfect mohair that you hold a lace weight mohair alongside a fingering weight sock yarn, and I had the perfect merino cashmere sock yarn and the perfect mohair lace weight for this sweater, which is what I used. But unfortunately, because it was right before Christmas and we were in the process of buying and selling a house and holidays with a toddler and all those things, it did not happen. And this sweater, if you've seen the pictures online, you know that it's a big, oversized, super cozy, super cuddly sweater. It has these lace panels running down the side of it, and it looks really complicated if you're not familiar with lace, but it's actually not too bad. I would say if you're a beginner lace knitter, it is a little bit more of an intermediate lace, but I definitely think you could tackle it. One of my favorite things about Andrea Mowry's patterns is she is an excellent pattern writer, and she's very good at writing every step of a pattern so that you aren't left guessing or having to fill in the gaps between instructions. She doesn't assume that you already know how to do something. So if she, I mean, obviously other than the basics, she assumes you know how to cast on and how to do a knit stitch, things like that. But if you know the basics of how to knit and purl and cast on and cast off, she's really good at, I think she's very good at presenting a really simple, easy to understand pattern, walking you through each step in order so there's not a lot of complicated shaping and things. This sweater doesn't really provide any shaping. It's a pretty straightforward, if you're looking for an easy to wear but also easy to knit silhouette, it's basically just a big boxy pullover, and the sleeves are really, really simple. You just kind of knit down on them. You pick up some stitches. You can see that here. You're knitting these parts up with the body vertical, and then you pick these up so that you'll be knitting kind of horizontally by picking these up and then knitting. And so I really do like the construction of this sweater. It's pretty easy. She uses a 3-needle bind off on the shoulders, which is one of my personal favorite techniques in knitting. I love how strong it makes it on the shoulders. And I love the split hem. Whoops, peacock feathers on my sweater. I love the split hem of this project as well. I think that's just a really cute little design feature. I feel so cozy and warm when I wear this sweater. It's super, super snuggly. You just want to curl up in PJ pants next to the fire with a big cup of tea and a book or a great knitting project and your journal. It's very like mindfulness, self-care, super snuggly, alone time, which is like my favorite thing now that I'm a mom. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to wear this sweater much in the coming months, which is a super bummer, but I did manage to finish it. I think it only took me about 2 or 3 weeks to do it, and I managed to finish this sweater back in early January, and I think I cast it on right after Christmas, and I finished it in early January after just a couple weeks. So I actually got to wear this several times just around my house before we moved, and I had to pack it up. The colorway that I used for this project is my hand-dyed yarn in a color called Mademoiselle. It's a very soft, girly, vintage blush rose kind of color. I'd been wanting to knit something with this color for a while, and then when the pattern came out, her sample that she uses was knit in a kind of a soft blush rose color as well from another indie dyer, and I took one look at it and said, that would be perfect in my Mademoiselle color. My color's slightly different, but it's very close, and I think it would look beautiful. But I almost went a different direction with this. I actually dyed up several versions of these yarns because I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. I also have a really cool like purple kind of lavender mauve color called Marvelous Darling, and I dyed some of that up, and it was just a little too purpley for me. I decided I wanted more of a pink sweater. But the other color that I came very near to casting on, so near that I had so much fun knitting this, I'm almost ready to knit a second one in this other colorway because it would be stunning, was a brand new color that I just brought out about the time this pattern came out called Not Your Mama's Nightie. And it's a really beautiful vintage peach. Very, very soft, very light, kind of mixing like champagne, peach, and like a rosy beige kind of a tonal. It's so, so beautiful. I used a skein of my, well, a couple skeins of my Dryad sock yarn, which is superwash merino, cashmere, and nylon, which gives it lots of warmth and super, super bouncy, cushy coziness. And I held it with one strand of my Starlet lace, which is a mohair and silk, and it is absolutely stunning. The texture of this is just so fuzzy and cozy and warm. The other project I finished recently, I actually just finished yesterday, and I am so stoked about it, you guys. If you've watched the video channel for a while, you have seen this project before, because I did an episode a while back where I pulled out a project that had been in timeout for years. I had tried to knit a 1940s sweater called the Always Suitable Blouse. It was in a pamphlet that I was given years and years ago. Somebody gave me a bunch of old vintage patterns, and there was this 1940s little catalog missing several pages. And the pages that are there, I found this gorgeous sweater and decided to cast it on, and I quickly found out right after reading through the pattern and then trying to cast on that the instructions are, one, full of errors, and 2, don't make much sense. There's a lot of very general, vague suggestions for the pattern, but not a lot of like connecting the dots and explaining how to construct the sweater. It's also knit in a very weird construction, and I was trying to follow the vintage construction as much as possible. So instead of doing like seamless in the round knitting, I wanted to sew up the side seams, and I wanted to try the unique construction that they did because I thought it might give the sweater a little bit better shape. And yeah, I tried. And yeah, I frogged multiple times, let's just say it that way. I recently got it out in the move. I decided I would give it one more chance, and if I couldn't figure it out after a couple of hours of dedicated attempts, then I would just frog the whole thing and repurpose the yarn for something else. Turns out I was almost finished with the dang thing, and with a little bit of careful reading through my old notes, looking at the pattern, doing some math, etc., I was able to finish the sweater, sew it up, and I think it's ready to be blocked. I even tried it on, and I was worried because I'm a little bit larger now than I was before having a kid, and I was afraid that the previous measurements that I had knit would be too tight. And vintage sweaters, you do want some negative ease where the garment is smaller than your actual body size so that it stretches and it fits very form-fitting like a glove, kind of like the sweater I'm wearing, which is machine knit, commercially sold. But you can see that it's really pretty skin tight. If you were to lay this sweater out flat and measure it, the bust measurement is slightly smaller than my actual bust line, so that when I put it on, it stretches and it fits really, really nice and form-fitting. Vintage sweaters are usually knit this way as well, so I knew that I had a little bit of stretch room, but I wasn't sure if it was enough. Turns out it was. It fits me perfectly. I actually love the way that it fits, and I'm really pretty happy with it. So, dun, 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 dun. Here's the project. This is my always suitable blouse, and I'm really proud of this because I have never had to engineer from pretty much the ground up a vintage pattern that was so tricky. I've done this before with other patterns and never had this much trouble. This thing was a beast, but I really love it. So the only thing I was going off of was an old picture that I have, and it was only a black and white grainy photo of the front. There were no pictures of the back or sides, none of the detail work up close, and I only had one page of the pattern. The back half was missing, and it was constructed oddly because you knit it in pieces, but you start at the bottom and knit up the front, and I started increasing for the bust line, and so it kind of came out a little bit here, and then you keep increasing for the sleeves. So the sleeves are knit along with the body, like, so you're knitting like this kind of action, so that they're these little cap sleeves, and they're not supposed to come down very far, they're just a little cap. And then you're supposed to take this pattern. In the picture, it looked like the lace pattern went all the way up and over her shoulder, and the construction was a little confusing to understand the pattern instructions, so I thought it seemed like you were supposed to go up over the shoulders. So I decided to write my pattern where you go up over the shoulders and then switch to stockinette for the back. And then I put those stitches on hold, live stitches on hold. I knit up the back doing the same kind of a shaping, but I only went up to about here, the bottom of the collar. Oh, and in the meantime, there's all these at the same time things happening in this. In the meantime, you do this kind of square neckline. I don't know if you can see that. So I did that by basically casting off this. I wanted it to be very square, so I cast off this section here and kept knitting both of these sides up, but there were no stitches here basically. And then the back, I knit up to where I would cast off the back neckline. And then I grafted, using Kitchener stitch, I grafted the part that goes over the shoulder to the part that comes up the back. So there's no visible seam. You can kind of see a little bit of a line where I grafted because I grafted a little too tight, but it's really not, it's not like a visible seam. And I think it looked pretty cool overall. But I really liked the little neckline, and then I went back and I picked up stitches around the neckline and I knit garter stitch, and I did some decreases in the four corners to get a really nice squared neckline. that was one of the features of this pattern I really wanted to incorporate, although I didn't make mine go up as far as they did in the picture because I didn't like the idea of choking on my neckline. And then I picked up stitches around the armholes, and I just knit a couple rows of garter stitch there and cast off, or rounds of garter stitch. So that's basically how I did it. It's a little lumpy bumpy, and my finishing is far from perfect. My seams on the side, actually, they don't look bad when they're on, except at the very bottom I did a horrible job in the ribbing. But they don't look too bad, but they're not perfect for sure. And it needs a final blocking. I did block the pieces while they were in process to kind of see how my measurements were lining up and how much further I needed to go. But I think it needs a final blocking to get it just that really nice crisp look. But it does fit me just perfectly, and I love the color. I used Malabrigo sock yarn. I cannot remember the name of their color. I think it might just be like yellow ochre or something like that. But it's basically this kind of like earthy, kind of soft mustard color. I like it. I don't know. As you can tell, I'm kind of into mustard and amber these days, so, and that's that. I really don't. I don't know how to stop talking about a project. It's always so odd. It's just like, in conclusion, that's that. In addition to finished objects, I have several projects going right now. As we all know, I'm not really a monogamous knitter. So here's what I have been working on. The first thing is this new sweater. This was the project that I cast on a couple days before we moved out of the old house and into our new home. So I have mostly knit this in the new house. And it's going really well. It's almost finished, but I still have a few things to do. This is the Attersee pullover. It's by the Blue Mouse, I believe. I'll look that up to be sure. But this is my first time knitting one of her patterns, and I like it. I was looking specifically for a deep V-neck, really simple, casual, everyday, modern kind of pullover. And I wanted something V-neck so it's easy to have nursing access because I am still nursing a baby. And just something I could throw on like with jeans or leggings and just kind of be casual and cozy around the house. I was thinking that I would have this finished by now and able to wear it in the cooler weather, and unfortunately I did run into a problem and had to frog the first part of this sweater and restart it. But it didn't take me too long to get caught up, but it did put me a little bit behind, and then I also just didn't knit on it for quite a bit when we first moved in. I am using my hand-dyed yarn for this, and I'm actually using a brand new colorway that hasn't even been released in my shop yet. So this is totally new. This color is going to be the new Gothic yarn, Gothic novel yarn color for a novel called Mysteries of Udolpho. So Mysteries of Udolpho will be coming out once my dye studio is finished, hopefully in the next couple weeks. And I love it. It's a deep mix of reds, maroons, burgundies, and purple. And it reminds me, when I was knitting with it, I kept thinking, it's too bad that I already announced that this was going to be the Mysteries of Udolpho colorway, because I kind of want to name it something about like red wine, like Pinot Noir or something, because the shades of it just remind me of red wines. I did pull a couple of different skeins from my shop that were from different dye lots, and even when you have yarn, hand-dyed yarn, unlike commercially dyed yarn, is hard to get dye lots for. I don't put dye lots on my yarns for a reason. And that's because I have had yarns that were dyed at the exact same time, in the exact same pot, treated exactly the same way, and the exact same base of yarn and everything, and they came out of the pot and they looked different enough that I would recommend alternating every couple rows as you're knitting so that you don't get a big break between skeins. So usually that is what I recommend people always do if you're working with more than one skein of hand-dyed yarn in a project. But usually I don't bother to do that, especially with my own yarns. I have done that a few times, and if I am concerned about it at all, I will do it. But I've knit a lot of my projects with multiple skeins, and I don't bother. I just knit with one until it's time to switch, and then I just knit for maybe like 5 or 6 rows. I alternate, and then I move to the next skein, and I've never really noticed a big difference. Once or twice I've had that happen with a big difference and I've gone back and fixed it, but usually it's not a big deal. However, with this colorway, I noticed a big difference. I was knitting with one skein at the bottom here, and I got about 2/3 of the way up the body and switched to the other skein, and I saw, at first I didn't notice it. I was like, it's fine, it's fine. And then as I got farther, I noticed there was like a big line between them, and because one of the skeins took up a little bit more purple than the other one, so it was like there was quite a bit more red on the top of the sweater as on the bottom, and it just bothered me. I kept knitting on it for a few rounds thinking it's just the lighting here, it's fine, it's not that big a deal. I asked my husband, because he's pretty detail oriented, and he was like, I wouldn't have known if you hadn't pointed it out to me, nobody will notice, blah blah blah. But the longer I knit on it, the more it bugged me, and then I couldn't unsee it, you know? And so I ended up ripping the entire thing back to, I think I left like the first 3 or 4 rows of ribbing, so I didn't have to do the cast on again, but I ripped out even most of the ribbing and started again, which was painful and put me back by like a week on my knitting. But it was worth it, because now you can't see, it looks beautifully blended, everything looks great. And the sleeves even look awesome. So I'm all done with it except for the neckline. After you knit this in one piece and then attach the sleeves, you have to go around and pick up stitches around this big deep V neckline and finish off the neckline. So that's the only part I have left to do, and I'm kind of putting it off, but I really do need to do it. But I did run out of yarn. I used the recommended amount. I thought 3 skeins of fingering weight would be plenty. So I've only got like a teeny little scrap of yarn left, and I still have to pick up all the way around this neckline and knit a few rounds. So I'm gonna have to bust out another skein, and unfortunately this colorway is with my business yarn that is still packed up in the basement because the dye studio isn't finished, and so I haven't unpacked it yet. So I need to go unpack that so that I can finish my sweater, but here it is. As you will notice, it has this really, really deep V in the back, and the fun thing about this sweater is it is reversible, so you can wear the deep V in the front if you want to wear like a camisole or another top underneath and have the V go down farther, or the way it's meant to be worn, and the way I'll probably wear it, is to have the back have the deeper V so you can see your back. I have a tattoo on the back of my neck, so I'd like to show that off, and then have the higher V in the front so it just kind of comes down more like a normal V, and there will be some more neckline here so it won't go quite as low. Okay, sorry this is so long, but it's been a while, so I have a lot to show you. I have 2 last projects to show you, and they're both socks. The perfect, quick, easy, take-along project. I just wanted something quick and easy, and I had just unpacked a box with my stash yarn in it earlier that day. So I ran up to the spare room really fast and grabbed a couple skeins of Felici sock yarn from Knit Picks. This is one of my favorite affordable sock yarns. You can find cheaper sock yarn even than Felici, but not by much. And only if you use coupons at like Joann's and Hobby Lobby. And the quality is great because it's 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon, which is a great fiber content for socks, and for the price, or for the fiber content, the price is really just incredible. I can't remember exactly how much these are, but I will leave a link to the Knit Picks website where you can find Felici below so you can check it out for yourself. It comes in all these amazing colors, and it is a self-striping sock yarn, which is something that I admire dyers for doing, but I personally don't have the patience to dye that myself, so I don't dye self-striping yarn, but I do buy it from other people. I cast on a pair of socks for my husband. So here's what we're doing. I'm just doing plain vanilla socks. I just wanted something that I wouldn't need a pattern for, that I wouldn't have to think about, that I could just mindlessly knit for the days when I'm really tired or not feeling super great. And I just want to like veg out with a movie or something. So, and I also really like to have socks on the go just for like long car rides, things like that. Now that we live out in the country, I have to drive kind of a ways if I'm planning a trip into one of the bigger towns around here to get, gosh, I sound like such a country girl now. Gotta get in the car and drive to town. It's 30 minutes to go to town and go to Target. But it is kind of, it's like 20 or 30 minutes to the closest Target. So sometimes if my husband and I are going together, I'll talk him into driving so that I can knit on his socks in the car. So that's what I'm working on, and I'm really excited. There's just a bunch of blues, and it's like 2 different shades of blue and orange and coral. And my husband loves blue and orange together, so I know he's going to love this sock yarn. The next project that I cast on, the other sock, this is an old cast on too. Part of the fun of moving is you get to clean out your stuff, get rid of a lot of things, and remember the things that you have that have been hiding away and haven't seen the light of day for a while. So when I was packing up our house to move from the old place, I unpacked a part of my house that I had been stashing a bunch of works in progress that weren't actively being worked on. So things I'd started and then set down for a variety of reasons. And one of the things that I found, in addition to the vintage sweater I showed earlier, was this fabulous pair of socks that are so cute. And I love the pattern. I remember that it was just so much fun to knit when I was working on it before. And I had one sock completely done, and then I'd started the second one, and these are also toe up, as you can see. And I'd gotten about this far up the foot, and then I ran out of yarn because I was using a leftover skein from another project, and I thought I had enough yarn, of my hand-dyed yarn actually, but it looked like, and I knew it wasn't a full skein, but it looked like it was fairly large in the cake still, so I thought I had enough for it, but it turns out I didn't, so I got about this far up the sock and ran out. So, and unfortunately I didn't have any more of it dyed up, but thankfully it was one of my hand-dyed colorways and a repeatable colorway, so I knew I could dye some more. So I put the stitches on a stitch holder so I could use the needle for something else, because at the time that this happened a couple years ago, I didn't have any of this color in stock, so I put it on the back burner, and then when I had time I dyed some more yarn up. But it took me a little while, like it took me a few weeks to get to dyeing it, and then a week or so to actually get it caked up. And so it's probably been 6 weeks at that point since I had put my stitches on hold and I was using the needle in something else in the meantime. Well, then I got really, really busy, and it just ended up being one of those things that I stashed it thinking, I'll get to that here in a minute. And I just never got back to it. So when I was packing, I found this, and I found the yarn and the sock and the finished sock, and I was like, those are so cute. Why didn't I finish those? And I even have the yarn ready. So I went ahead and pulled it out the other day, and I've started knitting. It took me just not very long even, but just a minute to find where I'd left off in the chart, and I got back to going, and now I'm working on increasing for the heel part, so I'm getting ready to turn the heel, and I am just loving this project again. This is the Speckled Space Socks, and I'll put a link to that below as well. This is just a really cute pattern that I came across when I was searching for sock patterns to use speckled sock yarn. I love hand-dyed speckled yarn, whether I'm dyeing it or someone else is. I am a sucker for a good speckle, and I love knitting this in sweaters, shawls, socks, whatever, but I really, really wanted to make some more speckled socks because I keep seeing all these cute speckled versions, but sometimes you just get bored of doing plain vanilla socks, and in the past I had mostly done plain vanilla or like ribbed socks, and I wanted something a little more interesting but still not super complicated. And I came across this pattern and just thought it was so cute. It has these little like checked chevron-y things almost that have this really easy little slip stitch pattern, like really easy, beginner friendly, and then the rest of it is just stockinette, so you alter stockinette with these chevron stitches. So I'm on the second sock, making good progress. I literally just picked this up like 2 nights ago, and then right after I picked it up I decided I was going to cast on my husband's because I wanted a vanilla sock to take in the car with me. This one is easy, but I do still have to consult the chart. So that's what I'm working on. I'm really looking forward to having some fresh socks off the needles for myself soon, and I'm thrilled that this one already had 1 sock done, and it's been long enough now that I don't have second sock syndrome, because I remember loving the pattern and thinking it was fun, but it's been long enough that I don't have any like residual like, oh my god, I'm so bored of this, I'm ready for it to be over. It's all fresh again, almost like it's new. I hope that gave you some fun peeks into what I've been doing in the meantime, and also hopefully gives you some inspiration. I like to watch knitting videos sometimes on YouTube or podcasts about knitting because I really enjoy seeing the patterns people are picking out and the yarns they're working with, so that I can get inspired to go stash diving or go shopping or pull out some new patterns, cast something new on. I just like seeing other people's ideas, and I'm sure that you do too. That's why I really love making these videos. I know how much fun it is to kind of peek into somebody else's knitting basket and see what they're working on and get some fresh ideas and kind of look at things in a different way. Sometimes it opens up ideas for patterns you normally wouldn't have tried. So that's another thing. I really love to watch a variety of different types of knitting videos too, because different types of people tend to like different projects. And sometimes I get really great color inspiration or ideas for patterns and new cast-ons just because someone will try a new pattern out that I normally wouldn't try, but then I see theirs and I really like it, and it opens up my mind to new ideas. So I hope that I can provide that for you as well, because I really love to watch other people's, plus it's just fun to fantasy knit and like see what other people are working on. You know, there's never enough time to knit all the things that you want to work on, so it's fun to watch videos of other people so that you can get kind of that thrill of watching the progress, selecting the colors, and seeing the finished object. I don't know, is that just me? Am I the only nerd who like seriously enjoys that? Like I could seriously just binge my favorite knitting podcasts with some knitting of my own and a good drink like on Friday night all alone. It's like such a nerd thing to do, and it's totally what I like to do, especially when I've had a hard day and the baby is finally down and I'm finally getting that alone time. I hope that this has been fun and inspiring, and I hope to have some new videos for you soon, but it is slow going with a new house we're settling into. But I hope you've enjoyed this little peek into what I'm working on. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, but it is now time to cast off. Love you!